Everybody, welcome back to Understanding Anxiety with Trace. So we're now in the fourth phase of the coursework here. The last one we talked a lot about communication, the different aspects of what's required for that, and the attitudes that you kind of have to have. And those are definitely important, and we need to have those laid in and in practice in order for us to move on to this next part. And this final phase is called sincere efforts. And to start with, we'll just go straight to sincere because it's very easy for us to be deluded or spiteful towards our anxiety, and we have to kind of change that attitude if we really want to make positive change with it. So to start with, I just have sincerity written at the top. That's today's video. And the first thing I want to talk about is help versus avoid. And we talked about this a little bit in the last module where, we have to kind of shift our perspective a little bit from avoidance to opportunity, and this kind of follows along that same line where instead of having the avoidance perspective where we're trying to stay away from the anxiety, we really want to get to the point where we have the mindset of trying to help it. And if you go back again in the last videos, you have to have that recognition there, you have to be able to communicate with it. But the trick is what is avoid? Because avoiding the anxiety, as we've already talked about, can make it worse, it can inflame it. And so avoidance in the perspective of anxiety, avoidance is suffering for it. Because in all its efforts, it's trying to reach out to you, it's trying to get you to pay attention to whatever it's trying to present to you as far as perceived dangers or whatnot. And so when we avoid it, we're actually causing it suffering because it's not being heard. We talked about some of that stuff before, but there's a couple of other things that go into that suffering. If we belittle the anxiety, if we ridicule it or devalue it's what it's saying or invalidate what it's saying, that has the same effect of causing suffering to it. Because like we said before, it is a part of us, and we have to recognize that. And part of that is responsibility. So we are taking the responsibility that we have in our lives and we're shifting it back away to the anxiety. And the sense that the anxiety is typically trying to present something to us that it perceives as a threat or something that we need to deal with, right? And instead of us dealing with that thing, instead of us making changes in our lives, we abdicate that responsibility to the anxiety. And then it kind of goes back into this cycle where we've given our responsibility back to the anxiety, and then we avoid that responsibility, we avoid what it's telling to us, which starts it back over to where the anxiety feels that it has the responsibility, which it does, and we're not listening to it, so it's not able to fulfill its purpose. So this creates a huge bubble of suffering that is, in a sense, at the core of the anxiety itself. And that's the main reason why it's actually, trying to get our attention in the first place. So the idea here is that we want to try to ease its suffering. In order for us to be whole again, in order for us to have a more appropriate relationship with our anxiety or to make it work for us, we have to be able to take away some of that suffering. And part of that is going to be taking more responsibility in our lives. Part of that is going to be, not avoiding what it's saying. And of course, we have to not, belittle what it's saying to us. And those are concepts we've kind of talked about in the previous communication module. You have to have that honor and respect for it. So, and this is, these are concepts that we've touched on before, but I'm trying to bring it together for you in a way that's going to help you understand the right attitude that you have to have in order to make progress with it. The next part that I want to talk about is gratitude. In order for us to have sincerity, we have to be grateful. And what I mean by that is, if you're going to try to help somebody with whatever project they're working on, you have to acknowledge the efforts that they've made already. You have to be grateful that they've made some progress. And if you continue to work with it and make progress, you have to be grateful for that as well. And so we have to be grateful of a couple of different things. And first and foremost, just its efforts in general. We may not agree with how it's presented, its issues to us, or we may not agree with its screaming, but at the same time, it's making effort, and we do have to recognize and appreciate that. The The next part is going to be it's perseverance. It is, despite the circumstances and despite the patterns that you have in your life, it is persevering in the sense that it's trying to reach you. It keeps trying, maybe different triggers. It keeps trying to get to you so that you can make a change in your life. And although that perspective is not something that you would have initially, it is ultimately what's going on. And the one that I really wanted to take a little bit of time on is the existence part. We have to be grateful for its existence. And what I mean by that is that if we still hold on to the seed of disdain or regret that this anxiety is even in our lives, then on some level we are trying to invalidate its existence. And I'm sure many of you have experienced this in your own personal lives where you have to validate your existence. Society in America nowadays is pretty prevalent on the fact that you have to earn your place, or you have to have a certain status to be valued enough or be contributing to society. And that feeling causes us a lot of pressure, it causes us a lot of stress, it causes us a lot of suffering. And the same thing applies with our anxiety. If we're asking the anxiety to validate its existence to us, then we're basically saying, I don't think that you exist because you haven't been useful, or I haven't liked what you've given to me, which is inherently, I would say, dehumanizing, because that anxiety is part of us, and we're taking that part and rejecting it completely and saying you don't exist, or you're not worth existing, which may be even worse. And so you can see these things can also, tie into the suffering as well. If we're saying that, I wish this anxiety didn't happen, I wish it didn't exist in my life, we're basically rejecting its efforts. We are rejecting responsibility for its actions and our actions. So you have to have these core fundamental ideas in place and actually believe them in order to feel that gratitude for it. It's a very powerful thing when you're able to introspect on your life and say, you know what, I see these positive changes. I'm actually grateful that it's around. I'm grateful that it's come into my life. I've made a lot of changes. But you're not going to be able to feel grateful unless you actually start to work with it. Which is where this is why this is way down the line as far as the coursework goes, is these other principles have to be laid in, these other practices have to be done in order for you to feel that gratitude, in order for you to actually have the right state of mind to ease its suffering. And what this is all coming back around to is that word sincerity. If we are not sincere in our efforts with the anxiety, and we're only working with it in order to get rid of it, or we're only working with it because we don't want to take that responsibility for our lives, or we would rather not have to experience the anxiety at all, we don't want to acknowledge the positive that's come from it, then it's going to be very difficult for us to make progress with it, because you can't lie to yourself. If you're being patronizing or you're being insincere, the anxiety knows that. It's part of you. It's tapped into your subconscious. It knows those things. So the sincerity aspect of sincere efforts is crucial. And in order for you to actually have that perspective, you have to do the work that I've laid out previously. You have to have that honor, respect, and be able to communicate openly. You have to take responsibility for the choices and the patterns in your life that have contributed towards this cycle. You have to be able to say, anxiety, I may not like your methods, but I do appreciate that you're trying. And if those come off as anything but sincere, it's only going to make the problem worse. You're not going to be able to make any progress with the anxiety. You won't really learn anything. And it's just going to kind of end up in this thing where this is a philosophical venture, and you feel like that you've made some understanding, but you're not actually dealing with the anxiety or making any progress. And this whole course becomes a band-aid, or something, a story to just make you feel better, which is not the point. We want to be able to actually make progress with it. I know some of this stuff seems a little redundant, but I'm kind of structuring it in a different way to kind of help you see, the right perspective you need to have. And if you guys have any questions, like I said before, leave me a comment, drop a message to me. I'll be happy to help out. If you would like more explanation on any specific part of this, let me know. I'll do the best that I can to get you guys the information perspective that you need. Until then, I'll see you next time.